Quarterback battle is still open, no matter how much some people might think it isn't. But what if Jack Miller shocks the world and wins it? Hmm.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. I'm Brandon Olson. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find my written work with Whole Nine Sports, Giants, Country, and NFL 33. Before we're getting into today's content, just going to ask you to like, subscribe, comment, review, join the Locked On Gators Discord. Links in the description below, all that fun stuff. But more importantly, Jack Miller III is competing with Graham Mertz, Max Brown, Jordan Guile, and Parker Licey to maybe be the starting quarterback for the Florida Gators in 2023. Obviously, that is more of a two-horse race than anything, but there are 5 QBs in the room for that spot. And I want to stress this because I'm doing this just like I covered Graham Mertz yesterday with what can he do? What can't he really do that Florida did last year, and how does it impact the rest of the quarterback room? But for Jack Miller III, it is so important to remember there is such a small sample size from him. Whether you're talking about Ohio State and combining that with Florida, such a small sample size. So, grain of rice with everything, but we will look at what is available. And what is available is pretty much only the bowl game against Oregon State, which sucked, and we will talk about why we scratch most of that a little bit later. But the thing he did pretty well was play action passing. And the thing that frustrated me, and I said this during the bowl game, I'm pretty sure I tweeted it. I said this in the post bowl game live stream, and I've said it since then. Play calling was not set up for Jack Miller to succeed. Jack Miller found a ton of success when he was working play action passing in the bowl game. And I get it. When you're down by a lot, it's hard to play action pass. But again, this is a coaching staff that loves to embrace analytics and embrace all the details. The details tell you, the analytics tell you, play action passing, whether or not your run game is working, play action passing helps you. Okay? So if you're down a lot, I don't care. Do play action passing. Again, not every time because that's just silly, but play action passing helps you. Jack Miller III against Oregon State used play action passes on 42% of his dropbacks, which isn't a bad number, by the way. It just should have been higher considering 80% of his production came on play action passing in that bowl game. He was cooking out of the play action game. He was, and especially when you consider his drop back passing where he wasn't play action and he was just dropping back, kind of sucked. It was bad. And I don't mean that he was inaccurate or anything. I mean that it was harder for him to find success. When you run play action, you can freeze linebackers, you can freeze safeties, not usually freeze corners because they're usually looking at the guy that they're defending, but it opens up your passing game. That is a fact. Again, that is not me saying, I love play action passing. Keep doing it. That is me saying, factually, play action passing helps you win games. It helps you pass whether or not your run game is being effective, which it wasn't being effective against Oregon State. That is a fact as well. And you were down by a lot. So I understand saying, oh, well, no one's going to believe us that we're running. Doesn't matter. Just do it every now and then. Just do more play action passing with Jack Miller because he was thriving on it too. That's a bigger issue for me. It's not necessarily that, oh, numbers tell you it works. It's that Jack Miller's play told you play action passing worked and that you should have operated out of the play action more often. That's what it tells you. If your quarterback is having success running play action plays, keep doing that. If your quarterback is having success running QB draw, keep doing that. You do what helps your quarterback. And Jack Miller was not helped against Oregon State. That was Outside of Vanderbilt, probably Billy Napier's worst coaching job of the season. There's just no other way around it. That is what it is. Another thing that Jack Miller did pretty well was scramble. And I know that during the game and after the game, I said that I wasn't a big fan of watching him scramble because he looked like he wanted to do it too early and too often. And I stand by that he wanted to do it too early and too often, but I don't have as much or as big of an issue with him running the football as I did in the bowl game and in the following days after. I've now watched that freaking bowl game like 4 times, okay? I hate myself. I've watched it 4 times. I had to watch it like the 4th time that I watched it was to get ready for this. So I hate it. And I hate myself clearly, otherwise I would not have put myself through that game again. But Jack Miller III scrambled 5 times. He ran, I believe, 9 times. Scrambled 5 times against Oregon State. He picked up a first down on just one of those. But he did something that I did not expect to see from him. And I think most Florida Gators fans probably didn't expect to see from him. In that Jack Miller III did a pretty solid job of making a man miss. Like he did a pretty solid job of making him miss. He had 2 missed tackles forced against Oregon State. And of those 37 yards that he had on scrambles, 19 of them came after contact, which you're looking at a quarterback that is picking up yards after contact. It's not ideal. We know that. No one wants to see your quarterback do that, but he did it. And that's something that you look at and you say, okay, I mean, obviously, yeah, some people will want to see your quarterback do that because that's a pretty cool thing to see. But it's also like, please, quarterback, just slide, get out of bounds, do something. But it was interesting to see him make men miss, pick up more than half of his yards after contact. It's impressive, okay? It was impressive. And I'm not saying he's Anthony Richardson, but he made some impressive plays with his legs in a game where he was not getting help in the passing attack, in a game where he was not getting help from his head coach, in a game where he was not getting help from his offensive play caller, who is his head coach, in a game where everything just hit the fan. Jack Miller made some plays, okay? And again, we'll talk about why we're going to just completely scratch off everything that happened in that bowl game. But first, today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. And new customers, guess what? You get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That is up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. All you got to do is download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. You can bet on everything. You can bet on money line, point scores, 3 points drained. You can bet on whether or not there's going to be a run in the first inning in the MLB. You can bet on home runs, strikeouts, which strikeouts have been awesome. Spencer Strider, I hate you because I'm a Mets fan, but I love you because you make me money. Just know that. Don't miss your chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 back in bonus bets back. If your first bet misses, go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. And now we're doing the same thing we did yesterday. We're talking about what Jack Miller III kind of can't do, maybe can, but kind of can't do. That Florida's offense did do last year. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is the inexperience as a starter, because that was an issue that Florida dealt with last year. And one career start for Jack Miller III, okay? Which, similar to Anthony Richardson had one career start going into the 2022 season, and that one start was a start where you can pretty much chalk off as, nope, don't care about it, because he was thrown to the Wolves against Georgia, which I get it. We hate them. We want to talk ourselves into, they suck. Fact of the matter is they're back-to-back national champions. Fact of the matter is that their 2021 defense was still the most dominant defense that I think, ever seen in my lifetime in college or the NFL. So, yeah, it's a chalk one up. Same thing with Jack Miller III in the bowl game. Obviously, it's a different situation, but one career start, and it was one of the worst possible opportunities you could have seen. And I say opportunities because I don't think it was one of the worst possible showings you could have seen when you take everything into account. We've spoken about this countlessly here. You take into account that it was a bad performance, sure, but we cannot fault him, or I cannot fault him. I won't do it. You can if you want. I will judge you a little bit, but I don't fault him for having a terrible performance in the bowl game because Jack Miller III injured his thumb before the season and missed the entire season until the bowl game. And I mean, wasn't practicing for the huge majority of that season. So you have that. So yeah, thumb. You need that thumb to throw a football. That was hurt, so he couldn't throw a football. So he didn't have practices just in the season. Let alone that, Billy Napier spent the entire season talking about we need to get bowl eligible for those. I think it's 12 extra bowl practices. Didn't have that. You didn't get that if you're Jack Miller III. You didn't have a full bowl practice schedule because you played one of the earliest bowl games possible. You spent days having to get prepped and travel, and then you get to practice. So injured for the huge majority of the season. Didn't have a full bowl practice schedule. You played against a pretty damn good passing defense against Oregon State. And guess what? You played against a pretty damn good passing defense in a situation where it was clear that you were passing for the huge majority of the season, or for the huge majority of the game, because it was a blowout. So you played against a pretty good passing defense in situations where it was obvious you were going to throw the ball. And you didn't have your All-American guard, which, say what you will, the offensive line stunk it up that entire game. You didn't have your All-American guard, who hasn't allowed a sack in his entire career. So you were getting pressured. You didn't have your, I will say, second most talented wide receiver, because Justin Shorter, in my opinion, is the second most talented wide receiver on the team. So you didn't have him. It was about as bad a situation as you can get. And you also had a bunch of depth guys not playing because they were transferred. So chalk it. It's a game where you just take the film, you put it outside in a bin, and you light it on fire because it has no value whatsoever. Okay? So there's that. Or no negative value whatsoever. The few positives, go ahead, take them and say, okay, like you did this in the worst possible situation. So congrats. Running the football for Jack Miller III. It's not that he can't do it. It's similar to Graham Mertz yesterday, but I said it's not that he can't do it, it's that he doesn't really do it. But obviously, Jack Miller III does kind of do it. He's a bit different from Graham Mertz because, in my opinion, Jack Miller III is more athletic than Graham Mertz. And even if you don't want to say he's more athletic, you want to say they're the same, or you want to say Mertz is more athletic, Jack Miller III does run the ball better than Graham Mertz. We know that. And he's obviously less athletic than Anthony Richardson because every quarterback that's ever touched a football field is statistically less athletic than Anthony Richardson. Running is something that Jack Miller III can do and wants to do, but he won't do it nearly as well as Anthony Richardson did last year. So that's what I'm talking about when I say what does he do or what can't he do that Florida did last year? He is not going to pick up those huge plays. I would liken Jack Miller III running the ball more to, we'll say like Derek Carr. We'll say Derek Carr or Geno Smith. Like you're not gonna burn people for 60 yards like AR did against Texas A&M or 80 yards like AR did against LSU. No, but you're gonna pick up a first down here and there. You're gonna pick up a couple yards after contact. You're gonna pick some up, and I don't want to say sneaky athletic because we know what that means. But he's going to pick up some He's going to pick up some numbers that you're probably not going to see, light the world up, but they can help. In 2022, Jack Miller in 2022, Graham Mertz had 6 yards per scramble, 4 scrambles over 10 yards, 11 rushes for a first down. You can see that from Jack Miller III and then some because he's going to look for more opportunities. So you're probably going to see more of that from Jack Miller III than you saw from Graham Mertz, less of it than you saw from Anthony Richardson, which is fair. That's fine to say. The last thing there is probably arm strength uncertainty is what I'm going to say. We know I'm not on campus with these players. I'm not at practice with these players. But I will say, from footage we've seen, whether it's in game or practice or the spring game, we haven't seen Jack Miller really push the ball. Whether you're talking vertically downfield or you're talking about just getting a ton of zip on the ball, we haven't seen that too much. Velocity didn't look bad against Oregon State, but it also didn't look good. So it's an incredibly small sample size where obviously we had Anthony Richardson with one of the strongest arms that you're ever going to see in Gainesville. And now we're going to someone who doesn't have that arm, which again, it's not necessarily a negative because Anthony Richardson, I would have loved to see him push the ball downfield more. Like I know yesterday I talked about Graham Mertz being good with the deep ball. Anthony Richardson only had 11 more attempts deep downfield than Graham Mertz. I would have loved to see Anthony Richardson have 100 plus attempts deep downfield instead of 64, but that's not what we saw. Looking at the rest of the quarterback room, like we did yesterday, where Jack Miller III starting doesn't really change much if you're Max Brown. Because, like I said, if you're Max Brown, you were never really thought of as the starter. You've been thought of as the dark horse in this quarterback battle between Graham Mertz and Jack Miller III. And we'll probably take a look at Max Brown as well. Maybe the Friday show will be about Max Brown possibly starting, what he brings to the table. But of course, tomorrow we have John Garcia talking recruiting. So we'll probably spend Friday talking about Max Brown and what he brings to the table. But again, Max Brown probably isn't changed. He was thought of as the dark horse. He was thought of as the number 3 going into this battle. He's probably going to be thought of as the number 3 unless he has a hell of a final stretch of the spring, the final week, and he has a strong showing. And then it's like, okay, well, maybe you're actually QB too. So you might see that. But again, with him playing football and baseball for the Gators, I would assume Max Brown stays. We've seen people transfer. We saw John Reese Plumlee go from Ole Miss playing football and baseball to go to UCF playing football and baseball. But it's hard to predict the transfer when you're so invested in being in that program. So for Max Brown, I would assume he stays regardless of who wins this battle. Maybe if he loses in 2024, we have a discussion again. Okay. But for now, Max Brown shouldn't be impacted. DJ Lagway, probably not impacted by Jack Miller III if Jack Miller III wins, similar to the way that he's not really impacted by Graham Mertz if Graham Mertz wins the starting quarterback battle, because DJ Lagway, again, it's probably worst case he's on the bench for a season and then he gets into the starting quarterback role, or he's at least given an opportunity to be the starting quarterback and win that battle in 2024 if he needs it. So Jack Miller III winning in 2023 doesn't really impact 2024 because you're probably going to have a quarterback battle every year. And I am fully of the belief that unless you have a quarterback who lights up the world, or unless you have a quarterback who wins you a national championship, you should probably go into every year with a quarterback battle. You should probably go into every year with a battle at every position because your goal is to play the best players available. So every year your roster's changing, people are improving, making significant jumps, some guys regress. You should have a battle. So DJ Lagway, I don't think is impacted by Jack Miller at all. Graham Mertz, if Graham Mertz loses the quarterback battle to Jack Miller III, there are a few options. One, he hits the portal immediately in May, the second window, which I spoke about this yesterday with Jack Miller III. If he loses the battle, if I'm Billy Napier, I don't name a starting quarterback until we get into summer ball. I wait for that second portal window to close, and then I name a starting quarterback because then I have both of them on campus. I doubt that they would leave and join a team at that point just because it's silly, right? So I wait until summer ball starts. If you're Graham Mertz and you lose this battle, you hit the portal in May, or you can hit the portal in fall, which I think is a dumb decision to do. I didn't like when Josh Braun did it. I understand he was unhappy and there were some other things going on, but I still think, you should just stick out for the season because What happens if someone gets hurt, you become the starter, and then you light it up, and it's like, oh no, we screwed up the evaluation. You're our starter now. So I think you should stay. Graham Mertz will probably, if he loses this battle, even if he's told he loses the battle after the spring game, Graham Mertz will probably ride the bench this season and wait for an opportunity, whether that's an injury or Jack Miller underperforms or whatever it might be. Graham Mertz probably rides the bench and waits for a starting role to open up here, or hits the portal after the 2023 season. And he's like, look, I lost to Jack Miller III already. You got Graham Mertz, you got DJ Lagway coming in, Max Brown stepping up. Maybe we just dish it and we move. And maybe that's a possibility as well for Graham Mertz if that happens. And now, as of yesterday, there's another commit that could be impacted by it because 2025 four-star quarterback Austin Simmons committed to the Florida Gators. This, no matter who wins the starting quarterback battle in 2023, will likely have no impact on Austin Simmons at all, but it does make 2024 incredibly interesting because Austin Simmons is a 2025 quarterback. He is capable and eligible to reclassify to 2023 if he wants to, so he can join the team now, which I understand is weird to hear, joining the team now as a 2023 commit. Deuce Robinson, top-ranked tight end commit for the 2023 class, just committed to USC like last week or 2 weeks ago. So it's still a possibility. Will he reclassify? I don't know. He said for now he's staying in 2025, so for now he's staying in 2025. But there is a possibility he reclassifies to 2023, in which case Florida Gators go into 2024 with Graham Mertz, maybe, Jack Miller III, maybe, and then almost definitely Max Brown, DJ Lagway, Austin Simmons, Parker Licey, Jordan Guile, and you're looking at a pretty strong quarterback room there, and you're not going to stop pursuing it. So it makes 2024 incredibly interesting if Austin Simmons does decide to come here. He's like, yeah, I'm going to redshirt basically this fall, but I'm going to have a semester of knowing the playbook. I'm going to have that over DJ Lagway when we get into our quarterback battle for 2024. So it's interesting to see what will happen, but again, probably has no impact on Austin Simmons' future as a Florida Gator if Jack Miller, Graham Mertz, Max Brown, Parker Licey, Jordan Guile win the starting quarterback battle. Probably makes no impact. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more Florida Gators football. As always, we got John Garcia joining us to talk recruiting, which I cannot wait for. Super stoked for it. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olson. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Whole Nine Sports, Giants Country, and NFL 33, and I will see you all tomorrow.